Ray Delgado put his palm flat on the wall behind the seats. Then he took it off, fast. The panel was warm. The car had not run since Friday. He had felt this before. Different car, same place, behind the seats. That one came back on a flatbed. Ray looked at the roll-up door. It was still locked. He was alone with it, and it was warm. Before the shop, Ray built aircraft parts. He glued metal skins onto panels that flew. He was good at it. Careful, slow in a way managers hated. The shop sat in Wilmington near the port. From the street, it looked like a place for boat trailers. Inside, they were building America's answer to Italy. The fastest car in the world, they said. Built like a fighter jet. Ray believed that part. He had built fighter jets. He knew what that construction could survive. He wanted his name inside these cars. Every car carried a small card behind the doorframe. The builders signed it before the car left. Ray's handwriting was going out to men who owned casinos, to movie people, to a tennis player he had never heard of. He told his wife each car took months. He was not complaining. His name was in there. That was the point. Then a car came back. Not for service. The owner wanted it gone. The complaint was a single word. Heat. Ray asked to see it. The foreman told him to stay on his own bay. The car sat under a cover at the back of the shop. On Sunday, with nobody in, Ray pulled the cover off. The first thing he found was a stain. It sat on the wall behind the driver's seat. White paint, gone the color of weak tea. The shape had spread outward like something poured from above. He ran a thumb across it. The surface rippled under the pressure. Paint does not ripple. He put his face close and breathed in. Sweet, chemical, the smell of a hot glue gun. Ray had smelled it in the aircraft shop. It meant something had been cooked, not burned. Cooked. Held a temperature, for a long time. He walked around and looked at the gap behind the engine. There was almost nothing between the engine and that wall. Nothing about the shape of the stain looked new. On Monday, he asked the foreman where the heat went. The foreman said it went out the back, with the exhaust. Ray asked what sat between the engine and the driver's spine. The foreman looked at the car, then walked to the phone. He did not answer. Ray stood there and asked it again, to nobody. He came back that night with a flashlight. The transmission dipstick came out black. The fluid should have been red. He wiped it on his sleeve and checked again. Same black. This car had barely been driven. Burnt fluid means a gearbox that has been cooking. Then he looked at what the gearbox actually was. A 3-speed automatic, the kind used in big American sedans. Behind it sat a twin turbocharged engine making enormous torque. Ray pulled the loom of wiring off its clips. The insulation had gone stiff. It cracked between his fingers like old tape. Bare copper, inches from fuel lines. A discolored wall was strange. Brittle wiring at speed was something else. He sat back on his heels in the dark. How hot did it get when the car was moving? This file sat in a box for years. Subscribe, because there are more of them. Ray already knew how the car was built. That was why he trusted it. The structure was not welded. It was glued. Aluminium honeycomb panels bonded together with adhesive. The same method he had used on aircraft. Light, stiff, stronger than steel for the weight. It was the selling point in every brochure. Ray also knew the other half of that method. Adhesive has a temperature it cannot go past. Above it, the bond stops being structure. It becomes a stain, holding two panels near each other. And here is the part that kept him awake. Cooked adhesive looks exactly like good adhesive. There is nothing to see. Nothing leaks. Nothing rattles. In aerospace, they had ultrasound, tap tests, records, sign-offs. Here they had a cover and a shop light. Ray took a coin from his pocket. He tapped along the seam, the way he was taught. Sharp, 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 then dull. He tapped it again. Still dull. He thought about the cards with his name on them. How many of them sounded like this? The shakedown run went out past the refineries before dawn. Ray drove it himself. That was allowed then. The desert air was cold enough to see his breath. He took it up through the gears on an empty road. The car was extraordinary. That is the part nobody says. It pulled like nothing he had ever sat in. Then the seat back began to warm against his shoulders. Not uncomfortable, just present. Then it was uncomfortable. Then he smelled the hot glue gun again, everywhere. He lifted off and the smoke came through the vents, thin, grey, arriving without any sound at all. He pulled onto gravel and pushed the door. It did not open. He hit it with his shoulder and it gave. Then he was standing in the cold, watching. No sirens, no other cars, nothing on the road, just the sound of fuel finding air. His wedding ring was warm against his finger. His clipboard was still on the passenger seat. The card with his signature was clipped to it. He watched the paint go first. The reason was not in the engine bay. It was decided in a budget meeting before the first car existed. A car like that needs a chassis. Chassis need tooling. Tooling needs presses, jigs, engineers, and a real factory. The company had a warehouse and a promise. So they chose the method that needed none of it. Bonded aluminium honeycomb can be built by hand, on a bench. It is genuinely brilliant engineering. It was also borrowed. In aerospace, that structure arrives with a system around it, thermal limits, inspection intervals, ultrasound, paperwork, an engineer who signs. They took the material and left the system behind, and once the tub was fixed, everything else followed. There was no room to move the engine backward. There was no money to redesign the bay, so the turbochargers glowed inches from the cabin wall. Inside a sealed box, built to be light, not cool, the heat had nowhere to go except into the structure. That is the stain on the wall. That is the black fluid and the cracking wiring. That is the dull note under Ray's coin. The gearbox was the same decision, wearing different clothes. No money to develop one, so they bought what existed. None of it was a mistake in the engine. All of it came from a room with a spreadsheet. They sold aerospace as a word. They needed it as a discipline. Nobody in that room ever touched the wall behind the seats. The cars came back. Some came back on trucks. Owners hired lawyers. Deposits stopped clearing. An outside investor took the company, moved it, renamed it. The badge on the nose said Vector. The name survived. The cars did not. 17 were finished. That is the whole production run. It had been on magazine covers, called The Future, but the flaw was never the adhesive. Adhesive does what adhesive does at temperature. The failure was that it was known. Ray had written heat on a build card. Service tickets said the same thing in other handwriting. Men who understood thermal limits worked a few streets away. The knowledge was already in the building. It just never left the building. Ray went back to aircraft work. He bonds panels. He signs inspection sheets. He keeps records. He does not talk about the fire. There is a build card on a shelf in his garage. His name is on it, in pencil. It was made for a car that was never finished. He has never thrown it away.